I can tell your mind goes in and out holes. I can tell your mind goes. I can tell your mind goes. Your mind goes. I can tell your mind goes. What do
Hey everyone, we have something very important to talk about, something that could influence the future of 3D printing as we know it. Washington State Bill 2321 is one of the most invasive and dangerous bills to your personal privacy as well as your freedom to make things. And of course, this is a House bill in Washington, so if you don't live in Washington, you might be thinking, well, it doesn't affect me. They voted their politicians in, it's their fault. They're gonna see the consequences just like all of those gun owners in California. Now, this bill would not just affect makers in Washington, but also nationwide if it passes, as well as potentially worldwide. This is why this bill must be met with resistance, and this may indeed be the future of 3D printing at risk. Before we get into the specifics of this bill, which actually just got accelerated onto a House vote now, it's fully moved forward and is going to be voted on, I want to just say that yes, I am a firearms enthusiast, so I do have some sort of a dog in the fight. I am biased in that way that I enjoy firearms, and I also enjoy making them. Whether it's through building one out of metal or building one out of 3D printed plastic, that is how this channel started. And so I'm going to acknowledge that, of course, yes, I am a proponent of people's rights to build their own firearms, whether that's with a 3D printer or otherwise. I also have to thank our channel sponsor, and that is Atrius Development Group. If you like going fast with your AR, you are going to love Atrius because they make the FRS. They've got an ambi version and a regular version. It's quite affordable, and it has 3 positions. It allows you to go into safe, semi, and a little bit faster semi. Atrius cares about the community and wants to get this kind of product in every freedom-loving American's hand. So I really do love Atrius for that. If you are interested in an FRS, never in a million years use PSR for 10% off your entire order from Atrius. Big thank you to Atrius for sponsoring this channel. Now, we're not going to be doing any shooting today, but I do have to thank also HSL Ammunition. Everything that I shoot is HSL, unless it's a caliber that they don't make, but they do make quite a few calibers. Their stuff is great for training. They also make defensive loads, so definitely check HSL out, and big thank you to HSL for providing the ammo used on this channel. All right, so what is Washington House Bill 2321? Well, I had a few people reach out to me on Twitter and in my YouTube comments asking for me to cover this on my channel. I still very much love 3D printing, and I do love making my own 3D printed firearms, like this Tech 9 frame right here. I know I haven't done a ton of 3D printing, which is not really a topic that we're gonna cover today, but I'm going to be doing more stuff just like this coming up soon on the channel. So if you guys like to see the print in the print, shoot, repeat in the PSR happen, stay tuned because we're gonna have more stuff. But let's talk about this bill. So the main goal of this bill, which was proposed a few weeks ago and now is going to the next step and going to be voted on, the key is it is going to be attempting to regulate 3D printers themselves. Now, Washington State already has a law that makes it illegal to 3D print or make your own firearms. So that's already a law. That's already been banned. But now they're trying to go a step further and ban 3D printers from producing or printing, or even CNC machines from subtractively manufacturing anything firearm related. Think about how dystopian that is. The government in your state, if you live in Washington, is trying to regulate you from creating certain shapes out of 3D printers. They've already made it illegal to make them, but they're going to try to control your ability to make them. In places like California and New York, they're trying to make it illegal to even possess the code, the G-code files, the STL files. Even being in possession of that file could potentially turn you into a criminal. This is art, this is free speech. This is absolutely insane, and I think it's just really important to talk about it. What this bill does is it tries to regulate printers sold in Washington. So what they're going to try to do is put blocking features in these printers before they are sold. They're going to require that each manufacturer that sells a printer in Washington State or comes through Washington State and lands in a store in Washington State, that printer has to have a mandated blocking feature set. So anything that could be construed as a firearm part, like a switch, for example, of course, that's illegal already, federally, not just at the state level. That is going to be for sure on their list of things to block, but it could be a pick rail. It could even be, for example, a pistol grip like this one. This could be blocked, even though it's not a firearm. It could be blocked. This could go on an airsoft gun, still could be blocked. What about one of these M-LOK rail covers? Blocked. Of course, a self-made firearm is going to be blocked. This is illegal in Washington, this frame. Now, if you guys want to get more into the details and also hear some really great points from someone who's not actually someone that is in the firearms community, but does a great job of explaining this bill and its potential implications, I would highly recommend checking out Loyal Moses on YouTube. I will link his channel in the description and some of the videos that he's posted about this topic. I think he does a really good job of talking about it in a very clear way for people to understand, and he does go into details around each section of this bill, so highly recommend you check him out. I'm just going to be going over some key points kind of in plain language summary here, but the bill regulates 3D printers, or it attempts to at least, which means every single printer is going to have blocking features, as I mentioned. These are going to be software and or firmware elements that detect certain shapes, the shape of a firearm, of course, and they're going to be updated by the Attorney General at a minimum of once a year. This is going to have a blueprint detection algorithm. It's going to be a system that identifies certain parts, like I said. So it's going to be implemented in July 1st, 2027 if it passes. So their attempt is going to be blocking regulated components. Now that's all up to their discretion. It could be an airsoft pistol grip. It could be a pick rail. It could even be, for example, an ARCA mount for a NATO rail that you could use on a camera, but because it can be attached to a rifle, that's now not printable. You can't make that anymore. Now, what are the penalties if you do commit a violation of this law now, if it gets passed? Well, you could first get charged with a misdemeanor, and if you have a second infraction, you would be charged with a Class C felony under Washington state law. So how realistic is this even? Well, it doesn't seem particularly realistic for actually stopping criminals from making firearms. So if you're Washington, you've already put a law that says you can't make a firearm. So that's illegal already. But now they're trying to just make the thought or the actual possession of a file potentially making that illegal. But not only that, if you want to make a firearm part at home, you're now gonna have to have an FFL. So if you wanna make anything that would be potentially blocked by this software that they implement, which is gonna be determined by the Attorney General, what makes the list and what doesn't. But if your pick rail, for example, or if your grip is on the list, you're gonna need to get an FFL to print that. How insane is that? It's completely asinine and ridiculous. Let's say you're watching this video though, and you're not really into making your own firearms out of a 3D printer. That's totally okay. And what if you're like sitting in Washington, maybe you're like a little bit left of center, or maybe even a little bit right of center, and you have a gun or two, you got your standard Glock, and you just want safety. You just want the community to be safe. And so you see this bill and you say, you know what, it kind of makes sense. You know, it's a safety bill where it's a public safety issue. People aren't supposed to be 3D printing these guns in our state anyway. What would be wrong with implementing this software? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. And this is something that eventually will affect all of us that are into this hobby, including myself, including you if you're into this hobby, and even people worldwide who are into this hobby. And they don't even print guns. You could just be printing miniatures. It doesn't even have to be firearms related. The firearms part of this, and Loyal Moses used a good word. He said Trojan horse. 3D printed firearms part of this bill is going to be a Trojan horse, an excuse to get them to be able to continue to regulate what you can and can't print. Potentially, this could lead to these companies, like for example, Disney, now copywriting your potential bust of, let's say, Darth Vader. They could come after you and make that not printable because they've put a blocker in the software. The government gives these companies a reason, an excuse to go and now be able to control what you can or cannot print. It's a mandatory update. Sorry, it's not going to work. Your printer won't work if you don't update this software. This is free speech being attacked. Your right to create, your right to fix, your right to repair, your right to just have an imagination and make things. This is what 3D printing is about. This is what making things is about. Another example, let's say your heater knob in your 2002 Ford Escort broke and you found a file online, and you know what? It's a perfect fit. It's a match. You can be able to print that thing out of PLA even, or whatever material you want. It's going to cost you literally 40 cents to print. But because of this bill, potentially Ford could in the future, if this gets passed, go in and say, sorry, that's our copyrighted material, that's our IP, and you cannot print it anymore. So we have put this on the list of blocked parts. This is about guns, it's about dangerous weapons, but this is what could potentially happen if this bill passes. Our freedom to create, our freedom to tinker is at risk right now, hugely at risk. And another thing is just not only does this apply to 3D printers, but it applies to CNC machines. It applies to businesses. Businesses under this bill, if they get caught either selling a printer that's not updated with the firmware, or let's say making a pistol grip that was blocked on their software and somehow they got around it, well, that's gonna be a felony. There's no misdemeanor. If you're a business, it's a felony in Washington state under this law. So we're talking about CNC machines being regulated. So if you are a Washington business and you are making, let's say, handguards for firearms, and you're CNCing them, and you don't have the need to have an FFL, right? That file could be blocked under this legislation. And I know you guys are saying, oh, well, it's super easy to circumvent those things. And I get it, it is. You could have a custom printer that's like a Voron or something that's completely built out and, you know, off the grid and everything, but you're still going to be committing a felony. And then the other broader thing too that affects us, all of us, is these 3D print companies like Bamboo Lab, for example. Bamboo Lab is not gonna have any incentive to make a specific Washington state 3D printer. They're not gonna do that. Their manufacturing process is streamlined. They're not gonna make a specific firmware for Washington state. They're gonna put this firmware into every printer. That would be my guess. Either that, or they're not gonna sell to Washington state, which I would say would be a better option for all of us, but potentially they're just going to implement this into their software. And that is a huge problem for everyone, because now we've all become subject to this nanny state monitoring of our business and what we choose to print. And if we don't want to comply with that, they're going to brick our printers. That is the potential for what could happen. So as you can tell, I'm super passionate about this. I started my journey here on YouTube printing things, and I found it so cool, so fun, so empowering, amazing way to express my willingness to build things. It's a very exciting hobby, and I just want this to continue. And this bill in Washington could potentially end that for everyone. We're already living in a world where privacy does not exist anymore. Do we want to continue to have the government spying on us through our 3D printers? Do we want the government to mandate a company that's giving you this tool to create things to no longer have any freedom to create the things you want? Is that what you want? If that's not what you want, I would highly recommend that if you live in Washington state, contact your politicians and tell them why you do not want this bill to pass. This is extremely dangerous for the right to repair, the right to be creative, free speech, code is speech. This is super important. I'm begging anyone in Washington, if you care about creating things, if you care about 3D printing, I don't care if you hate guns, I don't care if you hate 3D printed guns, 3D printed guns are already illegal in Washington, guys. Please, if you care about 3D printing, contact your representatives in Washington. Also, the catalog just got sued by the state of California. That's a whole other can of worms, but that's something that you should be thinking about. It's a similar kind of topic to this, but I just wanted to tell you guys about this because it's super important. If you don't do anything and you just want more information on this, I would highly recommend, as I said, check out Loyal Moses on YouTube, and I will link him in the description. And as I said before, I know some of you are quite upset with me for not doing more content around 3D printing, and so I hope that you enjoyed at least this video, because I still am very passionate about this hobby, and I've got some projects coming up soon here that I will be featuring on the channel, and I hope you enjoy them. Thank you guys for watching. I think this is really important, and I hope you guys, if you live in Washington, make your voice heard. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Natural habitat. Searching for rabbits. Whoa, there he goes. Are you gonna don't do it? Oh, that's crazy. Damn, son.